Hi, this is Jim from Safety Wars. Before we start the program, I want to make sure everyone understands that we often talk about OSHA and EPA citations, along with some other regulatory actions from other agencies, legal cases, and criminal activity. Everyone is innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. Proposed fines are exactly that, and they are often litigated, reduced, or vacated. We use available public records, news accounts, and press releases. We cannot warranty or guarantee the details of any of the stories we share, since we are not directly involved with these stories. At least not most of the time. Enjoy the show.
This show is brought to you by Safety FM.
Hello. It's been a couple of days. Don't worry, we'll be uploading the programs last week. So, what did I do this weekend? Great weekend it was. Went to a Father's Day baseball tournament with my son. His team was competing, and lo and behold, they won the tournament. A lot of happy people there. Like a lot of championship games, it's not the championship game that's often the difficult game to win. It is the second to the last game in the tournament, the semifinals. That was our challenge there. We pulled it through. In the first inning, we gave up 5 runs. So 4 runs. In the first inning, we came back, was nipping away, and then we ended up winning 5-4. And then the other, right? And that's how life is sometimes. That's how safety is. Where you are going and you're struggling, you think, man, why am I doing this? And then everything comes together at the end, easily. And safety, not only baseball, but life. Now, last program we talked about the Titan submersible. We did a 45-minute, roughly, deep dive into that. We're probably going to be redoing that program again, because that should be a case study program. That's worth easily an hour and a half. And we have clips, though, so you don't have to watch a whole hour and a half. Hour and a half of Safety Wars is kind of rough sometimes. Now let me talk about this real quick. Then we're going to go on to some analysis, which I don't think too many people have done this what I'm going to talk about next a lot. But let's talk about this. You're giving a presentation, you're giving a safety talk, you're doing a morning huddle, whatever you want to call it. Maybe you're giving a presentation to the C-suite. And C-suite mentality is and it's a correct mentality most of the time. We just need enough information to make a decision because we got a million decisions to make. We're C-suite. Now that's okay if you're C-suite. If you're running a company, multi-billion dollar company, you don't need to get into the deep dive with everything in there, all the stuff, you don't need to do that. I get it. But if you run your entire life like you're in the C-suite, I don't need to know any information. I just need to know enough information to make a decision. Doesn't always work out. I could go, and when we treat the workers like they're all in the C-suite and our coworkers like they're all in the C-suite, you're going to run into an issue. You're going to run into difficulty on managing safety issues, assessing risk, and everything else. Because you need to explain, if you're going to get people to comply, you're going to need to explain why you do things sometimes. Perfect example was a number of years ago, a local thing here that we've talked about. It is the Valero refinery in Delaware City, Delaware. chemical safety warden has on a nice video, and the hazard was 2 people entering into a confined space that had a nitrogen hazard. Both of them suffocated. It's a much longer thing. You can go look that up. And it was somebody went in without a permit, without air monitoring, without this, without that. Then they're because they dropped something in there, a roll of duct tape, if memory serves you right, and then they go in there, and they're trying to get it. The guy falls in, and then his supervisor goes in after him, and then it's a nightmare. You have 2 dead people. And by the way, if you're on the in the Delaware area, New York, New Jersey, Delaware, Pennsylvania, Maryland area, don't show that video. For that, it's a good video, but what happens is there's a lot of urban legends around that video, and I actually was at a presentation that included that video, and the foreman from that project was on that video, and he had a lot to say that wasn't so nice. But I digress. And one of the root causes of that injury was this. They had a sign like confined space, enter with permit only. And those signs are ubiquitous all over the facility. They're all over. Confined space, do not enter, enter with permit, blah, blah, blah. And what happens, they become so ubiquitous that you don't see that after a while. So what happens is, guys, well, hey, all of them say here, enter with permit only, and there's no hazards in it. We do the permit, there's no hazards. So let's blah, 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 we go in there. Anyway, because these signs are all baloney, or, they're horse groove, or rohat, as the Romanians say. And what happens is you have to explain a little bit more. That's what one of the things that came out of that report and investigation were. What do you have to explain? Now, had it said, no, do not enter, permit required confined space, something like that. Okay, and then you follow up with saying, nitrogen hazard, you will die if you go in here. Then guess what? People are going to treat that a little bit differently, aren't they? So, thus goes when you're on a job site. You can have a rule. Well, no, most construction jobs, they have basic PPE. You're going to have a hard hat. You're going to have safety glasses. You're going to have hearing protection. You're going to have safety-toed shoes. Or, right, meaning the ASTM 2416 standard, I believe it is. Don't quote me on that. But you're going to have that on there. And you're going to have now cut level 3 gloves. Now, how does that get translated into the crew, especially if you're on a site that doesn't enforce it? They may or may not wear the appropriate PPE for the job. So why do we wear this stuff? Well, it's not enough to just say you got to wear it. Why do we wear it? Because we cannot control all the hazards that are out there in the field. Impossible. We cannot control all the overhead hazards, the flying hazards. We're going to mitigate them the best we can. We're going to have equipment guarding on. We're going to have controlled access zones. So don't go there. You may get hit in the head because you're working overhead. We're going to have tethered tools. We're going to have all this other stuff, but you cannot control all of it. So that's why you have your PPE on. As a last resort, as a last guard. Right? When you start, right, and case in point, you got to explain to people what the process is. Same thing in the home, and you're trying to teach your children. You're trying to teach whoever. This is the process for doing this, X, Y, and Z. Well, Daddy, why are you doing that? Just tell us to do X, Y, and Z. No. I'm trying to explain to you why you do X, Y, and Z, because it's going to be more likely to stick in your head. And number one. Number two, you're training yourself to follow a little bit more detailed instructions rather than a TikTok length video or talk. That's what you try to do. Same thing. Another good example, and for safety in the workplace. Wear your respirator, because let's say you're dealing with mercury. Wear your respirator, there's mercury hazards. Mercury vapor. What's the normal person going to see without the correct training? What are they going to do? I don't smell mercury, and I've heard this done a million freaking times. I don't smell mercury, therefore there's not a hazard. Now, with a little bit of industrial hygiene explanation, you need a respirator on because we're 1/2 of the PEL, and we have a 2-to-1 safety margin. 1/2, right? We're at number one. Number two, mercury vapor does not smell. The only way that you can detect the mercury vapor was this handy-dandy meter. So therefore, you need to wear your respirator. And you can explain that again and again and again. Some people don't get it. Those are the people that you have to get out of, and you have to determine first why they have that thinking. Is their supervisor stating to them, don't listen to him? Don't listen to that person? You can't smell it? There's no odor here. Right? So that's why it's imperative that in your site orientation and in your training, when you're dealing with mercury vapor, you have a sign-in sheet. And on that sign-in sheet, it says, and I had to do this already after about 2 weeks of frustration. Mercury vapor, and you have it in multiple languages, and you have to read it to the people or make a video in multiple languages. Mercury vapor is odorless. You can only detect it with a meter. When you are told to put on a respirator, it means that you are above an action level or a permissible exposure level or whatever level. Now you're explaining to people. You have to explain why. Human and organizational performance requires explanation. Why? Because it's a systemic way of doing things. You don't say, now with some people it may be enough where don't be a jerk. That might be it. Don't be a jerk. Don't treat this person this way. That may be all. But with some of the people, you can have to go into, look, we're govern our lives with 5, some people say up to 7, right? Principles of human organizational performance, and you go through all of them. One of them is your reaction to things matter. Whether it's bad news or whether it's good news, especially bad news. So if someone gives you bad news, you act like a jerk, you think they're going to tell you about bad news? You have to explain. But you also have to be sensitive where you cannot treat people like everybody like they're idiots on your end. So you have your reaction to things matter. Because then you get the other part of it, right? Where, what, he thinks I don't know this stuff? He thinks he's talking to me like I'm a 3-year-old? Right? On that. Or the other way, and you hear from women, sometimes he's trying to mansplain it to me. And I'm not saying that for shock effect or to be offensive here. Because that's what happens with a lot of men. They come off as mansplaining. Right? And which could be offensive to some people. Could be, right? Where, oh, well, she's a woman, she doesn't know that, blah, 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 right? And then it starts up. No, look. How do we go about this? Well, look. We're trying to be less adversarial here. That's how I explain HOP. We're not into this adversarial bullshit that we hear on the other job. You have to do X, Y, and Z, and we're going to blame the employee. And we're going to blame... No, we're not into that here. Stop. Time out. Right? We're not going to do that. We're going to go out and we're going to do blah, 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 blah. And we explain. This is what our approach to safety is. We're not out to get you. We're not out to get people here. We got a job to do. We need to do it safe. We need to do it effectively. And we're all going to go home with a little bit more bling in our pocket, hopefully. and have a good, positive experience working here. And by the way, as part of your obligation to work here, one of your obligations is you got to report things. You got to let us know if there's a safety issue. You got to let us know all this stuff. We may feel like, we may feel aggravated sometimes, right? We try not to be. But guess what? We need to have that information, and we're not going to hold it against you. So if something happens, something to have this leading indicators. We're going to go out there and learn the job. We're not going to go out there and assume that we know how to do your job. We're not going to go out there and assume that we know your context. We're not going to assume anything. We're going to go out there, learn the job, learn how you're doing it. This is our idea of doing it. We have a plan here. Does this plan look good to you? Do we need to change it? We need our plan to meet reality, right? Safety wars, where the plan meets reality. And we go out there and we do that. That's how you handle it. You talk as a peer to people. You don't talk down to people. And all this stuff goes into it. And you got to be kind, of course. But that's me ranting here. So that's what it is. We're going to go into the coatings in a minute on the whole thing in the Lincoln Memorial Reflecting Pool, because we have some experience here dealing with industrial coatings. And we're going to talk about that in a couple of minutes here. And here we go. Doo-doo-doo.
Safety Wars is streaming now.
SafetyFM.com.
Have you listened or watched the Safety War show? It does stream live on
From
the
Feature
radio
Story
and
News in Washington.
on the streamer-emers that we have. So if you have not taken a listen to Jim Bozell and what the hell he's doing every evening with Safety Wars, I would strongly encourage you to take a view or take a listen, whichever option is available for you, and take a listen to what the hell he has going on. It will take some deep dives and some information that you might be interested in.
We're going to do FSN Radio News.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Kate Fisher. US President Donald Trump has said that Iranian officials who say they have not agreed to let International Atomic Energy Agency experts inspect their nuclear sites are wrong. Mr. Trump said the inspectors will be on the ground at the appropriate time, but added there was no rush. The Iranians have said they have made no such commitments. But speaking to reporters on Tuesday, Mr. Trump said he had confidence in the deal.
We're doing very well with Iran. They've been decimated, and we're making a deal with them, and we'll see how that all goes.
Meanwhile, Iran's president has arrived in the Pakistani capital Islamabad for a state visit, his first trip abroad since the United States and Israel launched strikes on Iran in February. The visit comes days after the signing of the Islamabad Memorandum of Understanding between Washington and Tehran, which Pakistani Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif co-signed as mediator. Hira Mustafa reports from Islamabad.
Experts who we have been speaking to in the capital are telling us that this is not at all an incidental trip, because Pakistan is a key mediator between the warring parties and has been shuttling messages between the Iranian leadership as well as the Americans ever since the war on Iran started. So in that context, it's a highly consequential visit of the Iranian president to Pakistan. He will be having one-on-one talk with the Pakistani civilian leadership. That includes Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif, Foreign Minister Ishaq Dar, as well as Pakistan's President Asif Ali Zardari.
A Taliban delegation has held talks with European Commission officials in Brussels, the first such visit since the group seized power in Afghanistan 5 years ago. The trip has drawn sharp criticism from human rights groups. Germany remains the only European country to have accepted diplomatic appointments from the Taliban government. Our Europe correspondent William Denslow has more from Brussels.
The Taliban spokesperson described it as a historic meeting. They say they hope to build positive momentum when it comes to opening up more consular services across Europe. It's at this moment in time, it's only Germany that have really accepted diplomatic appointments from the Taliban since they took power again in Afghanistan some 5 years ago.
A sell-off in technology shares has deepened on Wall Street on Tuesday as concerns over artificial intelligence spending and the prospect of higher interest rates weigh on markets.
I agree with Ed.
So we start with some of the headline numbers
idea.
right now. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is actually up slightly. It's up about 0.2%, but we're seeing big losses on the S&P 500. Right now, it's down 0.96%, but the NASDAQ is down 1.4%.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. It's been 10 years to the day since the British public decided to remove the United Kingdom from the European Union. A referendum result showed 52% of the country favouring withdrawal against 48% who wanted to stay in. Amid the current political turmoil in Britain, attention is being paid to the post-Brexit balance sheet. Anand Menon is Professor of European Politics at King's College London.
The root of Brexit is a trade-off, okay? And it's a trade-off between political autonomy and market access. If you're someone who thinks, actually, I want immigration policy, trade policy, regulatory policy to be made by my government in London without anyone else getting involved in it, then Brexit has worked in the sense that we now have that regulatory independence, the freedom to do our own trade deals, the freedom to set our own immigration policy. But, and the trade-off was always implicit in this, at a cost, which means that we no longer have easy access to the European market, so we've paid an economic price for that freedom. There has been an economic impact of Brexit, that's definitely the case. But secondly, it's also, I think, true that people look at the overall state of the economy and come to a conclusion about Brexit about that, and the overall state of the economy is not simply down to Brexit.
Today, majorities of British voters say they want the UK to return to the European Union, but as we will hear from Professor Menon tomorrow, that is a very complicated journey. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
Our main news again. US President Donald Trump has said that Iranian officials who say they have not agreed to let International Atomic Energy Agency experts inspect their nuclear sites are wrong. Iran's president arrived in the Pakistani capital Islamabad for a state visit, his first trip abroad since the US and Israel launched strikes on Iran in February. And a Taliban delegation has held talks with officials from the European Commission in Brussels. That's the latest feature story news. Kate Fisher reporting.
All right, let me add something else. At the broadcast, at the time of broadcast of this program, crude oil is at just about $73 a barrel. That is down significantly from last week. Even the June 2nd, it hit a lot higher than that. We're looking at 78.50 on the 21st. Here it was close to $100 a barrel, I believe, at one point here in the recent past. Now we're down to like 73, and the prices have gone down significantly also at the pump. So we'll see what happens here with this. It was like $95 a barrel a month ago, something like that. Right, 100 in April. It was over 100, so we're down at 73 on that. That's coming down now. A little bit of humor today. You always have to have some humor here with this stuff. So here we have a audio. I'm just going to do the audio. It's from the Oval Office, and it does apply to our conversation that we just had here. So this is the president as he, here you go.
Quantum technologies represents the next generation of innovation across computing, sensing, and networking with enormous significance for our country's economic growth, scientific research, and cyber security. It's really a big deal that we're doing today. And
yes, thank you, Mr. President. So 141 years ago, Albert Einstein, 121 years ago, Albert Einstein published a paper.
Nobody cares.
Good point.
And usually they won't catch you. But
Published a paper on the photoelectric effect, recognizing the quantum behavior of light, that it came in quanta. 40 years after that, President Trump's uncle, John Trump, was a pioneer in applying light radiation and the reflections of it to develop radar at the MIT Radiation Lab. John Martinez, down there, pioneered taking quantum effects and building them into a device to capture that behavior. He was awarded the Nobel Prize in Physics just last year for that discovery, that breakthrough.
Did you know of my uncle at all? No. You didn't? No. Oh. You missed a good bit. Would you like to...
Berkeley and MIT.
Oh, but MIT's right.
So what's the point? Why do I bring this up? Nobody cares. How many times have we heard that as safety professionals? Nobody cares, right? I had a conversation. We're working on a long-term project here on a history lesson where we got a historian who wants us to help him out on some presentations with some stuff, which we can do with you, by the way, also. If you have that, we can help you out on how to present things. And he said, well, no, I'm not the best looking guy. I said, okay. He says, I'm not really well spoken. I said, okay. Sometimes I skip over my words. I said, okay. And I said to him, nobody cares. With the information that you're giving us in your presentation is so critical, so unique, so well researched that nobody's going to care. So you know what the thing is? And this is what Jay Allen told me. Nobody cares. Just do what you need to do and you do you. And you go out there and you be genuine. Because right now, and we use AI on it. I'm not going to lie to you. Here we use AI, obviously. That perfection, people are rejecting it. There's a little bit of a pushback on there, on perfection. People want things to be genuine. They want to be human. They want you to be out there doing things. So there was a movie out a number of years ago, Artificial Intelligence, AI, right? What year was that? I'm sorry. I come and stream of consciousness. 2001. So this was a movie, if you recall, 2001. David, a highly advanced robotic boy uniquely programmed to love, who was adapted as a test case by a human family. When circumstances tear them apart, David sets out on a visionary quest for belonging and identity in a future where human and machine blur. And it's a Spielberg movie, right? On this, I think the movie was ahead of its time. Was way ahead of its time. And number one. Number two is that there is, even in that movie, there is a person, character, or at a sort of like political rally, combination political rally / Klan rally. And if you are familiar with talk radio, it's obvious who they're trying to mimic here on that during that rally. And it was not Rush Limbaugh or any of those guys. It was another person that used to have a program in San Francisco. That's who they were trying to imitate on here. You know, if you know, you know. I'll put it to you that way. Nobody cares. And way ahead of its time, and people are looking for genuine stuff. Just like with the Chris, let me get his name right. Chris Wright here. Name right? Chris Wright. Nobody cares that he made a mistake. Doesn't matter. The president's absolutely correct on that. So what am I saying? Go out there and do your thing. You make a mistake, so what? You just pick up and you keep going. Oftentimes people are happy it's not them up there making a mistake with that. And perfection is overrated on this. So here we have the U.S. Supreme Court rejects Michigan family's claim that county committed home equity theft over a $2,200 tax debt. The Pung estate argued the county took property worth nearly $200,000 to satisfy a disputed debt of over $2,000. U.S. Supreme Court on Tuesday unanimously sided with Isabel County, Michigan, rejecting a family's claim that local governments must pay homeowners the full fair market value of a property seized and sold in tax foreclosures rather than the lower price obtained at a public auction. The 9-0 decision, the court ruled that under the Fifth Amendment, the proper baseline under the takings clause is the price obtained in a tax sale, at least when the sale is fairly conducted in light of our country's history of tax sales. And this was a 9-0 decision. Justice Samuel Alito has explained that neither Fifth nor Eighth Amendment requires the government to compensate former owners based on the hypothetical fair market value of their property. High Court noted that creating a fair market value baseline would impose unprecedented burdens on local governments seeking to collect unpaid taxes, making these sales impractical. So, under Pung's rule, a tax sale to collect $20,000 in taxes would net the government a $20,000 loss, a loss paid out to the delinquent taxpayer himself. Possibility of such a perverse result would render tax sales infeasible as a debt collection mechanism. My opinion, get on your legislature to pass a law. Don't go through the courts. As it says in the Bible, try to settle. Because once you go to court, there's no telling what the hell is going to happen. Those are my words, not the Bible's words. With that. Now, on to our main story here. Here we have, I was unable to find a publicly available document, so I am going to be sharing a Scientific American document here, and I will be commenting it under fair use guidelines. Here, okay, share. Right here. All right. Poor preparation. Now, this is why is the paint peeling off of the Lincoln Memorial reflecting pool? An investigation. Poor preparation and a failure to properly apply the code may just be a few of the reasons why the reflecting pool's new paint job appears to be peeling off. Now, let me back up and say I have been part of investigations for paint failures. All right, so I do have a little bit of experience with this. I've had to take part in these investigations. I'm not a painting expert per se, what they used to call a NACE 3. I don't know, they changed the terminology now. I'm not a paint inspector, but I do know a boatload about it with this because one of my clients is an industrial coatings company here, and I worked with them now going on 17 years. 18 years, 17 years, something like that. Now, the Lincoln Memorial Reflecting Pools makeover was supposed to inspire patriotism, but chunks of material peeling off the pool's surface have instead garnered more puzzlement and speculation. President Donald Trump ordered the pool's renovation in April, and that order included painting its floor and walls blue. Yet within the weeks of the work's completion, photographs and videos of floating chunks of cerulean material that appears to be detached from the pool's walls have gone viral. This material is a polyurea coating, fast curing and durable surface membrane that can seal in water. It's often used to coat swimming pools. We spoke to engineering pool experts to find out what could be going wrong. For one, the blue material likely has no direct relation to large algal blooms. They're also plaguing the monument, according to Tom Orelhan, chairman of the Aquatic Council. Nor is it merely a reaction to the hydrogen peroxide, the NPS dumped into the water, an apparent effort to kill the algae, although that likely didn't help either. At this point, putting the blame for floating coating on any one factor would be premature. I agree, said David McFadden. Jimmy agrees with that one. I know this guy. CEO of the Paint and Coating Inspection Company, KTA Tater. I've met him before. So I'll say that much. That is an absolutely correct statement there with that. By the way, they're a very competent, they do quality control on painting is one thing, but it's also, they do some other stuff. Phenomenal company. I've worked with them before. Great company. All right. The failure of the adhesion to the substrate of that product probably could have been caused by many factors, he says. Still, based on videos of workers dumping hydrogen peroxide on the edge of the pool, he says that could have contributed to the issue, but probably not the only cause. Hydrogen peroxide can be used as a paint stripper, but the water in the pool will likely dilute it where it wouldn't cause current level damage. Right now, okay, this is basically my experience with this. And he goes into all of this stuff. Great article. I don't want to thing. And here is the material in question. Rhino linings Pipeliner 5000 can bond to virtually all substrates according to the company's commercial data sheet. So they have a cut sheet. Every one of these paints has a cut sheet. But granite is not specifically listed. This is what I've said from the beginning on this. Was the lining material appropriate for the substrate on that? And did the substrate, was it surface prepped correctly? Because usually it all comes down to, in my experience, I'm not a coating inspector per se. However, it's so you cannot paint a smooth surface. It has to have what's called a profile on it. Oftentimes, the profile is not correct, meaning it's got to be rough. It cannot be smooth. Number one, and this might and the pool might have had a patina on it, right on that walls, meaning like it's worn and abraded slightly, and it, it's like not it's a little bit smooth. It was put in 105 years ago, allegedly. So that might not have been the thing. And the other thing is, we're what we call the environmentals in the industry. That's what they're often called. Were they appropriate? We would call them the psychometric data everywhere else in the world, and that is the dew point and humidity and temperature and everything else. That might also cause problems. So there's a big question mark, and this is what Auerhans added. There's a big question mark as to whether or not there was some compatibility there for adhesion with granite, what I just said, right? The company that carried out the renovation, Atlantic Industrial Coatings, did not immediately respond to Scientific American for a comment in a statement posted on its website. The company said, along with the NPS, it has identified areas of pools that need repairs. Now, allegedly, there were people out there who were, quote-unquote, vandalizing this. I don't know if that's true. I don't know if that's not true. With that, who's to say one way or another whether that's true or not? So that's what I have on that. All right, with that. So U.S. EPA Administrator Fotuhia advances Trump administration's Alaskan energy and infrastructure priorities during trip to Anchorage and Nome. We have some EPA news here. Nothing came out with the Department of Labor. We'll cover that on our next program here. EPA Deputy Administrator Fotuhia advances Trump administration's Alaskan energy and infrastructure priorities during a trip to Anchorage and Nome. Last week, U.S. EPA Deputy Administrator David Fotuhia advanced President Trump's Day 1 executive order to cut regulatory red tape, fast-track critical infrastructure and permits across Alaska. Over the course of 2 days, Deputy Administrator Fotuhia, along with Regional Administrator Emma Polkin, spent time in Anchorage and Nome, Alaska, meeting with community members and state and local officials to discuss how to better solidify the state as a national energy and minerals powerhouse. This visit follows multiple trips to different regions of Alaska by EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin and other senior energy officials. Right, and again, we're celebrating the America 250. And this is from today also. EPA redesignates Cleveland area to attainment for ozone area, now meets air quality standards. Decision comes after more than 40% decrease in pollution over 8 years. Today, U.S. EPA announced Cleveland, Ohio area is now in attainment for ground level ozone based on years of air monitoring data showing the region meets the national standard set in 2015. This is a victory of cooperative federalism. And federalism, you let the states handle things. And once again shows that clean air and economic growth go hand in hand. This is one of those situations where you got to explain what the meaning of the word is. And federalism is one of those words. This decision will lead to faster and more predictable air permitting in the Cleveland area, while existing pollution controls and monitoring will ensure air quality continues to improve. Federal law requires a maintenance plan to keep the area in attainment for at least 10 years. And Cleveland area includes Cayuga, Guga, Lake, Lorraine, Medina, Portage, and Summit counties. And it goes on and on and on here at length. Check it out on the EPA website. EPA clears over 2 decades of state implementation plan backlogs in Oklahoma. Today, U.S. EPA cleared over 2 decades of backlogged state implementation plans in Oklahoma by acting on 13 SIP, that's SIP, right? Revisions submitted between 2002 and 2025. The revised SIPs work to align the state's air permitting with recent EPA Title V and new source review guidance that have cut red tape and streamlined the permitting process for states and businesses while maintaining critical human health and environmental protections. Clearing the enormous SIP backlog left over from previous administrations is the key to achieving EPA's Administrator Lee Zeldin's mission to protect the environment and grow the economy. So I don't understand why you had 13 revisions issued between 2002 and 2025 that were not acted on. I don't know. I don't know what the context is on here with this. I don't know. Again, they've revised the whole process here, they being the EPA, and with that to streamline it a little bit more. That might have something to do with it. Now, this is from a local for us here in New Jersey. EPA and HUD settlements safeguard Trenton families from lead exposure. The Trenton Housing Authority has committed to a comprehensive year-long program to maintain compliance with federal lead-based paint requirements. I'm going to say something very controversial here, probably at the end of this, so be prepared. EPA and U.S. Department of HUD, Housing and Urban Development, announced parallel agreements from the Trenton Housing Authority to address violations of federal lead-based paint requirements at their 6 public housing developments with approximately 982 units of housing, 1,838 residents in Trenton under the agreements. The THA will implement EPA and HUD-approved lead compliance plans, train staff, educate residents within 90 days. THA must inspect for lead-based paint hazards in all areas where young children reside and quickly, 6 months and 6 years usually, and quickly implement appropriate measures to address hazards. The agreements resolved alleged violations of federal lead-based paint rules at THA properties. EPA and HUD found that THA did not provide required lead-based paint information, including lead warning statements and reports of lead-based paint testing to residents at Mayor Donnelly Homes and Woodrow Wilson Homes. I know where those are. EPA also found that lead-safe work practices requirements were not complied with while renovations were being performed. Now, here's my question on this. And people ask me what my opinion is on this sometimes, but even if they don't ask me, I tell them. My opinion, lead-based paint, and whether it's military housing, which we have experience with here, or it's in public housing, which we have experience with here, and all this stuff, and they're not obeying the law, they being the owners of that, being the whatever state agency, they should not have sovereign immunity on this at all. There should be people going to jail. If you had a private industry doing something like this, and I don't know how many people got poisoned here with this, from lead, having little kids, and then all the other stuff that goes along with it. These are already at-risk communities to begin with. Now you're putting them at more of a risk here. They're already at risk. Now, somebody needs to pay the price for that. Somebody needs to go to jail. I'm sorry, just like in Flint, Michigan, they started convicting people and prosecuting people. Most of them were unsuccessful, but I think there needs to be a law removing all immunity from the administrators here and from these people not doing they have people doing renovations with no controls, allegedly, according to the EPA, not following the rules. Oh, well, it's a public entity. Don't worry about it. Oh, who cares? Oh, they're only at-risk communities. They're only black communities. They're only poor white communities. They're Latino community. Oh, who cares? They're not going to say anything. That's the mentality that I'm getting here from this. Here. Why? Because I've been in situations where that was the mentality. Specifically dealing with lead-based paint issues. And these people need to go to jail. Sorry. That's my opinion. With that, they need to remove sovereign immunity from these folks. And now I'm all fired up. So I'm going to come back after a couple minutes here, and we'll continue here with Safety Wars.